If you find yourself in the middle of an engine out service on a Lamborghini Murcielago, there's a service procedure that you should know about. It doesn't cost a lot of money to do when the engine is out, but it can sure save a lot of money down the road. Hello and welcome back to the garage. Here we have the engine from my 2003 Lamborghini Murcielago out and getting a bit of final service before it goes back in the car. Now, over here, we're going to look at a service procedure that a lot of people don't know about, but it's very, very important to do. It doesn't cost a lot, and you can save a lot of hassle along the way by getting this taken care of. So over here on the engine, you can see there we have the clutch where the gearbox connects, and we have this shaft right here. Now this shaft, if you have a look, goes along the side of the engine and then works its way back and works its way into the rear differential housing where the drive cups are. Now what happens is that these two bearings, the one right over here and the one right over here, are known to go bad. The bearings themselves are not very expensive, but if you find yourself with the engine in the car, it can be done in the car, but it's an enormous job that requires splitting the entire rear differential from the rest of the engine right over here, removing it, and then taking the shaft out towards the back of the car. If the engine is out of the car, as in this particular case, you can actually replace the bearings and then pull the shaft out this way, relative forwards to the car. And it becomes a very, very simple procedure. Not very time consuming and also not very expensive at all, because the bearings themselves, even from Lamborghini, are not too bad. So if we have a look on the workbench over here, we can have a look. These are the bearings themselves. You can see straight from Lamborghini. That is the part number right there, the Lamborghini part number from Eurospares. I think they were something in the neighborhood of around 30 British pounds a piece. But when we get the package, you find it's just an SKF bearing. There's two of them. And there's the SKF part number. And I would imagine that this bearing is easily available from a regular supplier, regular bearing supplier locally, and you wouldn't have to order it from Lamborghini. I already had an order going through, so it wasn't a big deal. So now, having identified the part and the parts, let's get to work and get this thing changed. The first step in getting the old bearings out is to remove the circlips that hold them in place. So if we have a look here, let's grab the work light and we look inside, we can just see the edge of the circlips. In this case, it's a little bit behind the flywheel. So all I'm going to need to do in this particular case is rotate them a little bit just by pushing with a flathead screwdriver, and then getting the circlip pliers and getting the circlip that's right in there out. Let's have a look at the other ones as well. And again, there you can see the circlip on the opposite side. And then over here, we have, you can just make out the top edge of the circlip. And then let's have a look at the next one. And there you go, you can just see the edge of the circlip. So step one is remove the circlips. And this will be the first time I'm doing it. And once the circlips are out, I want to see how tightly these bearings are actually in there. So now we're at the stage where we're ready to pull the shaft out of the engine. As you can see, we had to remove the clutch. And the reason for that is I wasn't exactly sure the clearances and what was involved, but what I was able to confirm is that this shaft on either end, you can see the circlips have been removed, and the shaft on either end actually flares upwards just a little bit. We'll have a look at that once the shaft is out. But it means that the bearings really go in one orientation, which means everything has to come out this way. It comes out that otherwise, if the flywheel were here, the flywheel would bump into the bearing on its way out. Now to take this out, what we use is a slide hammer. So as you can see, the end of the shaft, it has a female thread in it. What I did was I grabbed two bolts, one that goes into my slide hammer, one that goes into the shaft. Welded the two of them together, and what you do is you slide this out with force and just slide and bang away at it, and it will progressively pull the shaft out. Here we are with everything apart. The shaft comes out very easily. On the diff side, all it is just slipped in. Here are the two bearings, and this is where we had the slide hammer to pull it out. So if you look closely, one of the things you'll see is that there's a bit of a lip over here. And that lip means that this bearing can only slide in this way, and this bearing can only slide in this way. So coming back to the engine as well, what we learn is that you can actually put the center bearing in by itself, put both circlips in as if it's ready to install, and then you can install that circlip right over there, slide the shaft all the way in, then bring the bearing in and just tap it in very, very carefully. This fit over here is not a very, very tight fit, so you're not smacking it on or anything of the sort. You can just tap that bearing in, put the circlip in, and then the assembly will be done. Here we are with everything back together. As you can see, the clutch has been reinstalled along with the flywheel, and so is the shaft and the bearings. Everything's been cleaned up and has gone in great. Let's have a look at what the old bearings look like. Coming over here to the work cart, the bearings were not terrible, but they do spin really, really freely, and they do have a little bit of axial play, so they were certainly on their way out. And for about $30 a bearing, it's quite the savings to do it at this stage. Now I also give it a bit of a thought, and just thinking, how long would it actually take to do this job when you're in the car? Now, my assumption is, of course, when you're in the car, the shaft has to come out backwards. So you would have to disassemble everything that's necessary in the back of the car, exhaust, supports, everything, all the clearance that's required to then remove this diff, pull it out, and then do the work backwards. I would be amazed if this job could be done in under 10 hours in the car, and with the engine out, and again, assuming that almost every time the engine comes out of one of these cars, the clutch is being done, this is a 30-minute procedure tops. Very, very straightforward, not difficult to do. In my particular case, I got a little bit lucky as well. When I took everything apart, I knew that my clutch had about 10,000 miles on it. If you have a look, someone had written there that it was replaced on January 31st, 2013. And that matches my service history exactly. What I did do is, I took the entire clutch apart, checked the friction surfaces, they look perfect. And the actual clutch disc itself, according to the service manual, has an allowable wear of 0.7 millimeters. And in my case, I was between 0.05 and 0.1 millimeters. So still a long, long way to go. And proof positive that if you drive these cars carefully and don't launch them really hard all the time, spinning your tires, that the clutches can last quite a while. So 10,000 miles on 0.1 millimeters of wear, not bad at all. We put it all back in, and we'll be reusing it, get a bit more life out of it before replacing it sometime, hopefully well down the road. Again, thank you very much for joining me on this service procedure, and we hope to see you in the garage again soon.